When I was working as an architect, I was a project architect for a major building in New York City for a large auction house. The clients would come to my office and tell me all of the reasons that they should have a corner office and beautiful mid-century Eames furniture. They'd say things like, "I've dedicated myself to this company for my whole life. If I just had a corner office, I'd be fine." I realized that what we did would not help their wounds, and I quit architecture. But I realized that the process of solving problems with this methodology was very powerful. It was so powerful that people thought it could heal their wounded souls. So I took that set of ideas, which I'd learned in architecture studio, and began to apply them to other areas. That was 27 years ago, so there's been quite a migration since. And it's a long, boring story, but I ended up working in various corporate settings using these same design thinking principles and now teaching it in business schools around the world. My private opinion about what design thinking is that when you boil it all down and you look at it plainly, it's simply common sense. I call it advanced common sense to give it a professional patina. But what it really is looking at problems in a very straightforward, honest way, finding solutions to those problems that make a lot of sense. And when you look at something that way, and you've all done this, you see something and you say, of course that's a great solution. But we didn't know it was a great solution until we stumbled upon it using these steps. And so the idea of advanced design thinking and innovation as something remarkable is not as appealing nor as accurate as thinking of it as the application and discovery of a common sense solution that works really well. If we contrast it to linear thinking, the kind of single solution generation that is very common in business or in business schools and some other disciplines as well, design thinking is a way to create multiple solutions around what we saw today as being a deeper level of inquiry. We understand the problem better as one of the outcomes of design thinking. And with that deeper understanding, we tend to solve the problem, but not just in one way. We generated 20, 30, dozens of solutions today in a short time to the significant problems that were brought into our workshop. And so design thinking is a way to have more ideas about an accurate question and to have ultimately multiple solutions to that question. Design thinking isn't a replacement process for everything else in the world. We are so excited about it right now. But it won't take the place of analytic thinking. It won't replace other forms of solution generation. It's a different kind of toolkit that is applicable to many problems, but not every problem. So I look at it as a different way to approach things. If an automobile has an automatic transmission, think of design thinking as a manual transmission. It's another way to get where you're needing to go. I think there's two reasons why design thinking is thought of as so special today. One of them is that a group of people, probably similar to me, became disenchanted with the formal design discipline or profession they were working in and realized that we could, in my case, we could use design thinking beyond the building line. We could apply it to different sets of problems. The other reason is that we've come to the recognition that the level of complexity and the scale of the problems that we face as a society and as a world, one world, are now so complex that our old tools really can't solve those problems. And so we have, as I described this morning, these wicked problems, these hairball problems, these indeterminate, ambiguous, large-scale things that our old tools of problem solving simply can't address. And so design thinking comes along, or comprehensive thinking about a problem, and gives us access to not only seeing it better, but with the networked digital world that we're now quickly evolving, we're having better tools to model solutions and to model questions. So it is, in essence, a set of tools whose time has come, enabled by remarkable technology that links everyone together, both in common problems and, we hope, in some common solutions. We teach design thinking with a combination of principles and activities. The activities that we believe are the best to teach this with are hands-on learning, learn by doing, using real examples, and creating real solutions. When you were a child and you were learning how to ride a bicycle, I bet you didn't read a book and then go out and get on your bike and just pedal away. No. If you were like me, your father was behind you, stabilizing the bike as you began to roll, and he would let go and you would fall down. And what did he say? He said, "Get back up and try it again." And so you did. And after repeated times of this, suddenly you were riding your bike. And that's what we do. We learn by doing. We fail, often. But we learn from that failure, and eventually we learn how to stay upright. I often joke and say, I make my living having bad ideas. And that's true. I have many more bad ideas than good ideas. But as Linus Pauling said, the way to have a good idea is to have lots of ideas. And so we generate all kinds of ideas from these sessions, and we take the best ones and we implement those, and we test those, and we prototype those, and we get feedback on those, and we quickly learn more about them. This is the essence of the design thinking methodology, is to approach it from the standpoint of, I don't know the answer. Now, it has taken me 40 years to, I hope, mature to the level when I'm very comfortable saying, I don't know. And that's the invitation that the world gives me to go in and find out. To be curious and to be empathetic about this. It's really so freeing to be a professor who says, I don't know. Let's find out together. I've taught this methodology and these workshops in 4 continents with very different cultures, from South America to Asia to the US to Europe. I've yet to find anybody who couldn't do it. I've certainly come across people who thought they couldn't, or who were so bounded by the cultural orthodoxies, limitations of their behavior that they thought they couldn't. But everyone is born with an innate creativity, and you know, we solve problems all the time. Every single day we're solving problems. So it's not a unique activity. What design thinking does is it organizes it into a very disciplined framework. It's hard work. But we go step by step and we trust the process. And I've yet to come across, well, that's not true. I have come across 4 people that simply couldn't or wouldn't do the process. And, you know, not everybody has to do that. But yes, it's a fairly universal thing. As Picasso said, everyone is born creative. It's the battle to stay that way as we grow into adulthood. Well, today we spent 5 hours working on it, and people left here activated, maybe not fully, of course not fully trained up in this, nor do they have enough experience at it that they could tomorrow go lead work like this in the university. But they have a good introduction. My experience with this is that, and our students at the University of California, Berkeley, spend a semester, sometimes a year, doing deep work in this, and they come out very competent. And they go into companies, and they begin to lead these efforts. I'm really delighted at the number of students who come from the workplace into our classes, and they know some of this. 5 years ago, no one was talking about design thinking and experiences in the workplace. Routinely today, I get both letters from people who have left our classes and gone to work and say, I didn't understand what you were talking about, but now I do because I had this experience at work where we had a significant problem to face. I applied these principles and I saved our company $1 million in financial accounting costs because we re-engineered our thinking around it. Or students will come in to the beginning of the classes and start to tell me stories about how they are using divergence and convergence and design thinking principles in their businesses. And these are companies like Intel and General Electric, large, significant firms that are beginning to understand and use and seeing the value, both in qualitative terms, but also quantitative terms. It costs a lot less money to quickly prototype good ideas than it does to take a long time producing bad results. Well, I think scientists are like all of us average people. I don't think there's a unique capability any more than an artist is a unique capability or a mathematician or a professor. I think that design thinking or the capacity to empathetically solve problems in a particular process is a skill that is widely practiced and widely applicable. But the unique case of the sciences is worth talking about because we've built up the scientific process in a way that is somewhat linear and is certainly based on provable phenomena. And that does create a certain habit of mind that makes the deployment of design thinking principles a little more challenging because it's harder if we have a way of thinking about problems to deploy a different methodology. I grew up with design DNA in my blood. It has taken me a lot of work and a lot of study to understand the scientific process, to understand analytic processes, to understand the legal process of the future as a function of the past, precedent thinking, and even critical thinking skills. So I like to think that design thinking is not unique to anyone or not accessible to anyone, but we all bring our prior experiences and the tools that have worked for us in our careers. And if those are very radically different than the skills that design thinking offers, we tend to be somewhat frightened of them. I like doing things the way I've done things. We all do. Change as a human quality is a difficult thing. And so people who are introduced to new tools, whether they be design thinking or any other new idea, often have the first response of, oh no, that won't work for me. I do it this way. And it so happens that humans are a bit of a change-resistant species. We're creatures of habit. And so anytime something new comes along, be it technology or process, we tend to have to grapple with it a little bit before we adopt it. It has to be proven to us. I say to people in workshops like we had today, I don't ask you to believe this. I only ask you to do it and decide later. It does have its steps and stages. The major ones are rooted around how we define a problem and how we go about solving that problem. And the main stages that we talk about in our workshop and in our courses is a four-step innovation process. It begins with observation or ethnography. It proceeds to the generation of insights, and followed up by ideation or potential solutions, and choosing some of those better ideas, and then building prototypes, narratives, experiments to get feedback on those ideas and improve them. And eventually that cycle yields higher and higher fidelity or more and more thoroughly conceived solutions that eventually yield themselves to products and services and policies and other implementations. So those four steps are the critical ones. Within each one of those, we have whole sets of disciplines. We talked about ethnography today as the observation tool. And in ethnography, we observe people doing what they do. We talk in the environments they do them. We talk to them about their lives. We generate a lot of qualitative data about the issue we're working on. And then we start to develop from that data and from what we call desk research, insights about the nature of those issues, Then and only then, when we've understood people's needs, do we begin to create solutions for them. Because humans are such wonderful solution makers. We want to jump right to it. So we often create really bad solutions to problems because we haven't understood what the real question is. And so that's where we get into the domain of unintended consequences and short-term thinking. Inside these, we talk today about diverge and converge. Each one of those phases of diverging is the idea generation phase, where we defer judgment. We go for quantity. We build on the ideas of others. We think visually. And in the converging phase, we work affirmatively. We stay on point. We use the word and instead of the word but. That's a great idea. But here's why it won't work, as opposed to, that's a great idea, and if we put this with it. And so we work in a very disciplined way. People who observe us working, either in academic setting or in the consulting setting, often remark that, wow, you really are strict. And we are. It is a lot of fun to have this situation in which we build strong riverbanks so that the water flows smoothly. And it's after some work doing this, I experience this with my partners in our consulting firm, Collective Invention. We work so effortlessly and so in such a disciplined way that we sometimes aren't even aware of what we're doing, but it's because we've done it thousands and thousands of times. And at that level of proficiency, we never really have to look too much at the rules because it's ingrained in us how we work. But we always use the exact same process. And one thing I want to say about that, when we enter into a process with the spirit of not knowing, the only thing that can guide you is the process. And so we often, and I find this almost on a daily basis, we find that we have to trust the process, and when we don't know what to do in the next step, what does the process tell us we should do? And we do that, and it yields the results. It's hard to trust that process. I guess that's why it's taken me till this age to feel competent at doing this.